All right, we're moving on in the agenda to council-initiated discussion. So you know what this is about. We've been in control of the agenda up until now, and now it's open microphone for the council members. If there are reports or presentations that you would like to hear at future council meetings, we're all ears to hear about that. If you think of or are aware of concerns in the research field that should be brought to our attention, we're happy to listen to those as well.
In other words, what's on your mind?
Yeah. Or what would you like to hear about in September?
I'd be really interested to hear how, now that we're coming out of these pandemic days, the sort of the health of the students that have been supported by NHGRI through this. And I was thinking maybe like the Salt Lake City meeting, the next year of that, maybe there's an opportunity to check in on how the students are actually doing. The ones that their PhDs have probably been delayed by several years. They've really struggled with lab environments, et cetera. Just in case there's things we might need to do to support them.
Tim, I heard health and I heard students, and I'm curious, I assume you mean the professional development of?
Professional development, mental health,
And do you, and
and so on,
but do you mean really just the graduate students, or do you mean any of the trainees we support?
I guess I
including
said
postdocs?
students, but I probably mean all trainees,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Okay. So another way to phrase it, you'd be curious what we know about the professional development and general well-being
Like what the
of
impacts have been.
trainees, NHGRI supported trainees.
Yeah, and if there's things we need to do to support them, that cohort, if you will, even more.
I know
Laura,
that
go ahead.
we asked for the new NCATS director to come the last time, and I just want to again say that it would be great to hear Joni Rutter and
Okay.
what's happening.
So, some of this sometimes relates to their availability, some of it relates to the agenda, what we can fit in, but we will absolutely put that on the list, and I'm sure she'd love to come.
So,
Nancy, go ahead. No, Nancy, go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, it's a small question. I think the postdoctoral training awards now have a first-year payback requirement. We're trying to understand whether there's any appeal for that when trainees are unable to do a second year in science.
Anybody know that? If they do, please come to a microphone, a live microphone. It looks like it's either Deanna or Betty or Lucia or Heather. It looks like Deanna.
I'm assuming this is live. There is an appeal process, but it doesn't go through NHGRI. It has to go through the Payback Service Center. And there's, in the section of the Grants Policy Statement 11.4, it talks about the appeals process and what's necessary to document why they can't pay back.
Thank you.
I think Olga. Olga?
Thank you. I have 2 points. One is actually related to the trainees, if it's possible to see, not even just trainees, but actually our investigators, especially junior ones who have gone through the pandemic. We know that there's been disproportional impact on various categories, both by gender and by race and by other categories. So can we look at outcomes? Like even, I know it's a bit hard to look at outcomes, but maybe we could look at, are they able to get their next R01? Are they able to get their first R01 if they're a junior trainee? Are they able to get tenure, right? And figure out if there's ways that we can support people who have been hit disproportionately by this.
And Olga,
And that's, oh, sorry.
I was just to clarify, by the way, it's really funny because your yellow hand completely blends into the beautiful green trees. So it's actually hard for Rudy and I to see your hand up. That's why we were slow. And your back right. By the way, when you say junior investigator, I'm assuming you want NHGRI data, not NIH data.
Yes, NHGRI
Okay.
data.
Of course, the numbers will be small, but we could talk to program staff and figure out what we can try to figure out. Okay, and you were going to say
I mean, if
something else?
NIH wants to figure it out for us and we can help
parse
as
it,
an
yeah.
HGRI, right? I mean,
Okay.
and then the second point is I'm still on my quest for, making sure, I think NHGRI can really, has been and should continue to be a leader in data access and being able to think further, right? Like maybe we could have somebody, and unfortunately, I don't have a great idea of who the somebody is, but some magical person who could come and talk about, thinking about genomic data access, especially essentially the PARs we've talked about today, for example, right? Like how, it's all relies on basically having access to these genomes, having access to all this socioeconomic data, right? Like how well this data are truly shared, what shared really means, the challenges, the opportunities, maybe there's in other institutes very successful projects that have been really great at being able to get data out faster, basically like best practices and what people are thinking about. I have small requests.
Okay, that the last one's hard. Actually, they're all hard, but no, Valentina's telling me it's not that hard. Do you have any clarifying questions? If not, you could talk to Olga offline, or you could ask her now, your choice. We have Valentina come to the microphone.
Yeah, I'm going to check if what I have in mind matches what you had in mind. So we can think of a variety of approaches that we're testing and experimenting even in the GRI to find alternatives to the typical DB-GAP process. We can tell you more about what is happening and what other institutes are doing for that. We can talk about what the ENVOL is doing. We can talk about equivalent platforms that are funded by other ICs that are actually trying to facilitate data sharing and so on. Is that what you had in mind or something else?
I mean, these all sound great, but I actually had more of a, I guess, meta level point of, for example, if you have the genomes having, for example, variant counts, right? Like if their variants are matched to the controls, right? Like there's all these things that sound like they're in the weeds, but that basically block huge numbers of people from being able to do this research, right?
Okay.
And a lot of these groups are, right? Like, so actually making stuff truly available, right? The consortia that say data is available, but then what's actually available is just allele frequencies and the full data, right? Like things like that. So more on that side, although I think everything you've talked about actually links in with making this work.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Joe?
I guess I'll jump on the same train that Olga was on. Probably not in September, but maybe after that. And I know I've seen some things go back and forth with Valentina and others on both data privacy and data sharing, and what's the strategy within NACHGR and how that's evolving. And Valentina, we've talked a little bit about it, but I think it would be good to bring it to the council. And then another look at, the view of GDPR, CCPA, and all of the evolving, maybe an update on how NHGRI is thinking about all the data privacy issues that are starting to get a lot more energy in the industry. So those are kind of Olga's topic on top of data privacy is what I would suggest. And I don't know that it'll be ready for September, but some point in time in the future, I think it'd be good to go through that.
And by the way, this is a higher level issue around privacy, but privacy around genomic and DNA information is breaking news today. There's a science piece that just came out. There's a New York Times article. My email's exploding with news alerts about this. So there's yet more genomic news today about a study and a commentary and a New York Times piece. But that all wraps around privacy. So
yeah, I think
it's related to microbiome work, but still.
Genomics will be the tip of the spear when it comes to people thinking about how impactful that could be in the future. It's being used as a lightning rod, so I do think your organization will be right in the middle of it.
No, I think you're right, Joe. I think you're absolutely right. Thank you.
That's a good enough list for me. All right, so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last action is for me to read the conflict of interest statement to the council. This applies to the applications that you will review in the closed session tomorrow. You must leave the meeting room when applications submitted by your own organization are being individually discussed. In the case of state higher education or other systems with multiple campuses that are geographically separated, own organization is intended to mean the entire system, except where a determination has been made that the components are separate organizations for the purposes of determining conflict of interest. You should avoid situations that could give rise to charges of conflict of interest, whether real or apparent. For example, you should not participate in the deliberations and actions on any application from or involving your spouse, child, recent student, recent teacher, professional collaborator with whom you have worked closely, a close personal friend, or a scientist with whom you have had longstanding scientific or personal differences. The NHGRI staff will determine the appropriate action based on recency, frequency, and strengths of such associations or interests, either positive or negative, and will instruct you accordingly. In council actions in which your vote on a block of applications without discussing any individual ones, for example, the on-block action, your vote will not apply to any of the applications from any institution fulfilling the criteria noted above. Please sign the conflict of interest and disposal of confidential material forms that Comfort Brown has sent to you and return them to Comfort with your signature by email. So I think we're done. You can whack that gavel again, and we will see you all tomorrow,
That gavel.
whether virtually or in person, at 9 a.m. East Coast time.
For the closed session, 9 a.m. Everybody knows that, 9 a.m. Have a nice dinner, and we'll see all you and see you in the morning.